even in the contract, it says within it's like a kind of a long time horizon in the contract. It says, hey, there will be a jersey redesign via Nike at some point. But essentially what they want to do with the first jerseys is to make subtle changes. So that's what you're going to see. And I will say this too. I always think jerseys look a little bit different hanging, on a hanger in a store versus if you go look at some of the stuff that Justin King and that crew have already put up where it's like on a mannequin, you get a little bit more sense of what it looks like. And then I think to really get a feel for a jersey, you got to see it on an athlete, padded up, and actually, in person. So I think they kind of did go with what has worked there for the most part. It is very similar, subtle changes. Obviously, it's got the Nike swoosh on there, the check on there. So that's the biggest change for people. But I think this. Well, I know this was not meant to be some crazy redesign. Now in the future, maybe we do get that.
Yeah, and to your point, I went back and looked just to make sure we weren't dreaming this, but it is in the agreement with Nike that at some point, and I don't have that date in front of me, but at some point, Nike has promised to revamp the football uniforms and also provide an additional alternate uniform for the football team, right? So I think some people were wondering, and look, not all Nike schools go the Oregon route where they seem to have a different alternate uniform every week. And I don't think that's going to be the case here at South Carolina either. But at some point, if you're looking for something different or upgraded or whatever you want to say, at some point that'll happen. Right now, it's a little bit more of the classic look. And I think, too, like there's already a lot of product that's released. If you come here to Traditions and check out all the product, that's another thing, Wes, that I know you talked to Jeremiah Donati about, is that there's going to be even more product for the fans released as we continue to get into this thing in the future. It's July 1st. These transitions happen at different times, but there's going to be more. This is not every single product that you're ever going to see from Nike.
Yeah, that was something that was kind of hammered home to me. It's like this is going to be a cascading release of apparel, shoes, hats, jerseys, polo, whatever. Everybody knows the type of stuff that will ultimately be available. But just because something isn't available right now does not mean that it won't eventually be available. And I was even talking to someone, not at South Carolina, but they were sort of explaining how, the game day polos that are kind of official every single year.
Yep.
Those don't necessarily typically arrive July 1 in the first place. So it's kind of a situation where, of course, if you switch to Nike on July 1, you're going to go ahead and roll all this out if you're South Carolina. There's no reason to wait, but there will be certain things. It doesn't always align with the year-to-year calendar of when this apparel might come out, even if you were already a Nike school. So I think for people, try to be patient. Like, I'm sure there's going to be some glitches. There will be some issues. Anytime there's a major change like this, that stuff is a reality of life. That's how it works. But, for the most part, it does feel like everything's been going pretty smooth. And, there's just, it's kind of an avalanche of information. I've just from a media standpoint, honestly, I've been trying to say, all right, how do we sort through all this? There's so much to kind of tell people about and so much to provide from, you might in a normal July, a uniform release, we might do an hour on that just because it's July.
Sure.
You got, a complete new 10-year era here. We haven't even got to the announcement about the 5 blue ribbon athletes with Nike. Uniforms across the board with, different sports. How about the Dawn Staley aspect of this? That was, I think Dawn was kind of, I'm sure maybe quietly pushing for this a little bit. But if you're Nike, you had to have been saying, hey, this is an opportunity to get back officially in a capacity with Dawn, who was one of the original Nike athletes. So, man, we got a ton of stuff to cover today on top of recruiting.
Yeah, it allows you as well to partner up with Asia Wilson with her, obviously shoe line that's out now through Nike and do a lot of stuff with that. So plenty of reasons to be excited for what's going to be happening as this new era begins. Again, we're out here all morning long, going up until noon. Again, a lot of people coming in and out buying stuff. And again, we all went in there and looked at the Nike room. If you're buying one thing like today, are we going t-shirt, hat, shorts, polo, jersey? Like, well, what's the first thing you would grab?
Me, hmm, me as me personally, or if I'm putting myself in a
You
fan's.
personally, like, what is Wes Mitchell going for buying today?
For me, I think it's got to be a polo, like a classic. And I know I haven't been back there actually. Are there Nike hats?
Oh, there's everything.
Hats, visors.
It's
They
all
got the hats in.
they got hats. Yeah,
Did you see hats? I definitely saw
I saw
visors.
visors. Okay, I
Okay,
gotta
maybe the hats
double
aren't it.
check
Yeah,
on
Let's
hats,
not
but
visor. Yeah, let's
let's not
not
set.
give
'Cause
false
I know
info.
from what I've heard in a general sense, hats were one of the things that it was. All right, are those going to be in on day one? Are they not? Not positive on that. But for me, a classic polo is where you start if you're kind of stepping into a new line here, like South Carolina is in terms of availability. What about you, Chris?
I mean, so right now, and I know we're getting closer and closer to football season, but with the new era of Schnallball coming in,
Mm.
and just the look of the aforementioned, you know, home plate look, I'm grabbing one of the baseball shirts if I'm a fan
yeah,
coming in here.
yeah. Well, again, they got tons of options for you to choose from, no matter what sport. T-shirts, polos, jerseys, the whole 9 yards. They got it out here at Gamecock Traditions. Again, we're gonna be out here all morning long. So come by and see us if you're coming by to pick up your first edition of the Nike South Carolina gear. Got plenty of things to get into, as Wes mentioned, a lot of recruiting stuff going on in the next couple days as well. We'll also continue our countdown to kickoff and start continue our preview with opponents as well. We'll be talking some Texas A&M coming up in the 10 o'clock hour too. Again, broadcasting live from Gamecock Traditions on Sunset in Lexington. Going up till noon. It's the Extra Point here in the game. Tyler Head here for our friends over at Twin Peaks. That big soccer tournament is still going on. We're actually in to the knockout stage and America plays tonight. There's only one place to take in all that great, amazing soccer action. That's with our friends over at Twin Peaks. We got a lodge located right down the street from our station at 600 Gervais Street down in the Vista. Get down there, pull up a bar stool, order yourself some delicious scratch-made food from the Twin Peaks kitchen, and don't forget about those 29-degree draft beers to wash it all down with as well, and root on America as they continue on through the tournament. And no matter what time of year, no matter what sports are going on, Twin Peaks is your ultimate destination today, tomorrow, this weekend, whenever. Get yourself down to Twin Peaks and enjoy all of the great sports, food, and so much more. Twin Peaks eats, drinks, and scenic views. Welcome back in. Extra Point. We are live here at Gamecock Traditions on Sunset Boulevard in Lexington for day one of the Nike era for South Carolina Athletics. Tyler Hay, Chris Clark. Wes is here. He did go into the Nike room, so we may not see him for a while.
Yeah, I was going, dude. He's getting lost there. He probably won't be back this segment.
Now he can't hear us in there because our show is piped in through the speakers in there. So Wes, hopefully you're enjoying your shopping experience. And as we mentioned him a moment ago, they quite literally have everything you can think of when it comes to your choice for Nike apparel. Again, we're looking at the jerseys a little bit earlier, the t-shirts and all that kind of stuff. And again, I've lost count of the amount of people that have walked by us with bags full of stuff, wanting to be among the first of their group to get Nike stuff.
Yeah, it's exciting, man. What time did they actually open here?
I think 8.
8. Okay.
I know they
were not open at midnight.
They were not.
Although if they were,
the website was open at midnight, and that's where Scott was telling us they had hundreds upon hundreds of orders coming in, overnight for people that wanted to get on this as quickly as possible. I did hop on the website as soon as I got up this morning to look at the jerseys to see what they look like. And again, as we talked about a moment ago, very similar in terms of what they've been wearing these past couple of years, but that doesn't mean that can't change over time. Because again, this is a 10-year contract, and Nike, certainly more than capable of making tweaks as the years go by. And I talked about this Jordan K the other day. The NFL has like rules about the amount of changes you can make to uniforms and jerseys year by year. College football doesn't have that. So you can there can be something radically different by 2027 if that's the direction Nike wants to go. But plenty of reasons to be excited. One thing we mentioned a moment ago was the blue ribbon athletes for Nike, which has been announced this morning as well. 5 of them for South Carolina: Lenora Sellers, Nick Harbert, Dylan Stewart, Chloe Kitts, and Joyce Edwards. And this is viewed as the elite level of their NIL partnerships with Nike schools. So again, when you think about the biggest names in athletics here at South Carolina, those are certainly the names that come to the top of the mind. And they are getting the opportunity to be a part of Nike's blue ribbon elite NIL roster.
Yeah, and I think this is another kind of value, like regardless of which apparel dealer South Carolina went with, whether it was Nike, Under Armour, Adidas, whoever, that was gonna open the door for the opportunity for like direct NIL deals, which is this is Nike's program for that. And I think for these guys, it's pretty cool that you're now able to enter a partnership with the biggest brand that is out there and the biggest platform. So pretty obvious if you're Nike why you picked these 5. I mean, you're talking about a couple of All-Americans in Kitts and Edwards. You're talking about probably your 3 biggest name guys in terms of football as well. And, I think there will be more in the future, obviously, but this just shows you like there's a reason why these first 5 were picked. And, I think it makes a lot of sense. I thought it was kind of worth noting too, diving into some of the release information from South Carolina Nike about this program. And there's even like kind of here for themselves to have some creative freedom to kind of help with the campaigns and even future products, which, I think essentially means like, if you're Nick Harbor and you walk in and you say, "Hey, I've got some ideas as an athlete for things I think you guys could do," then there's at least the potential for them to listen to you in terms of that. Now we are talking about like the biggest apparel brand in the world, so I don't think they're not gonna just put you in a room and say design your custom shirt or whatever. I wouldn't think, but
there's probably a lot of hoops to jump through.
Yes, but just the fact that is part of it, I think is a pretty cool layer to this.
Yeah, and if you go back, I actually did go back and look more at the original agreement, which it seems like so long ago now as we got closer to this actual switchover. And, the biggest reason to make this change was not just how much cash can South Carolina get, right? That has become, I think, in this new era, a little less important. South Carolina wasn't going and saying, all right, we are going to sign with the apparel provider, be it Under Armour, Nike, Adidas, whoever it may be, and we're just looking for the most cash in pocket, right? The biggest, Jeremiah Donati's talked about this a lot, the biggest reason to do this was just the Nike brand. Fans have been wanting it. He wants players to have the best. I mean, one of the things that's in the original agreement is South Carolina is going to be wearing, the same cleats, the same chassis on the uniforms as 75% of active NFL players. Right, so something that you can use in recruiting. They've talked to players about it in recruiting constantly. Ever since this announcement was made, the possibility became real of switching over to Nike, but also some of the marketing slash NIL possibilities that it unlocks, as you talked about, Wes. The cash compensation that goes into this deal, which is quote unquote just $5 million. That can be used against marketing initiatives with athletes, or it can be delivered. And even in some of the redesign options that Nike has in this contract with South Carolina, some of them have cash options for them. Some of them don't, right? So, for example, it says within the first or during the first 4 years of the term, Nike's going to provide USC with a full redesign of the uniform closet. Minimum 3 uniforms. South Carolina can get cash per uniform if they, for whatever reason, decide not to do that. And then also a bespoke alternate football uniform. So something totally customizable. That's what we were talking about to open the show. When will we see an alternate uniform? Well, we don't know for sure right now. All it says is during the first half of the term, so within the first 5 years. If for some reason South Carolina decides not to do that, then get $10 million.
Sure.
Now, will they probably do it? I would think so, probably. But that's a fully customizable, brand new uniform that's unique to South Carolina. So there's some pretty neat options when you start digging back into the actual structure of the agreement.
Did you see anything that caught your eye, Wes, when you went in there a minute ago?
Yeah, there's a lot of man. Even knowing that this is not like everything, it is kind of overwhelming when you first walk in there. I do like I saw the baseball shirts. They actually have a lot of nice baseball shirts.
Yes.
They have I thought this was kind of cool. That kind of retro looking Gamecock logo, also paired up with a retro Nike logo on some shirts in there is nice. And I kind of like the just traditional like t-shirts with they have the script Carolina in there, and it's kind of I don't know what Nike calls their fabric, but it's like a workout t-shirt. All they have those in garnet, white, black, multiple colors. I I might try to get some brownie points by getting my wife something while I'm here today. So
it's probably smart.
She's a University of South Carolina grad as well. So maybe I'll bring home. I just got to decide what that's going to be. But lots of stuff in there to catch your attention. There were a few hats, not a ton of hats available yet. I don't think, but the fact they've got any, I think that was something they were a little up in the air. But from what I've heard, both at the football facility and here at Gamecock Traditions, every day there's a new truck that pulls up, and they're like, "What's going to be on it this time?"
Here's what we got.
Yes. So I'm sure some anxiety, but also some excitement with everybody involved in this thing.
You mentioned that retro Gamecock logo, and I was asking Chris about that because it's just not something. And again, my couple of years being here that I've seen a lot of, but it definitely seems like something that may be featured a lot more with the Nike stuff because again, a lot of T-shirts and hats and jackets and stuff like that in there with that. Again, it's something that's been around, but it seems like Nike's kind of making that more of a feature than it has been in the past couple of years.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense, man. You wanna give people lots of options, and that's certainly one that has popped up in recent years, and I think it is something that fans are excited about. You just want to give people as many different various options as you possibly can.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Again, we're hanging out here at Gamecock Traditions. Going to be out here all morning long as we bring in the Nike Air. Again, tons of people coming in, already getting their hands on Nike gear, and we hope to see plenty more of you as the morning rolls along. Jay Phillips also going to be out here later on this afternoon from 3 until 6 as well. It's a very big week, not only for the Nike stuff, but for recruiting as well for South Carolina. There's a lot of big names getting set to make their announcements in the next couple days. We'll dive into some of those names coming up next as we continue on with the Extra Point. Tyler Head, Chris Clark, and Wes Mitchell along with you here on your Wednesday on the Game. Tyler, Chris, and Wes hanging out with you here on your Wednesday, July 1st, the beginning of the Nike era for South Carolina athletics. We're out at Gamecock Traditions here on Sunset Boulevard. Like I said, we're actually set up in Traditions Fine Jewelers in the same building as Gamecock Traditions. A lot going on here. We're standing across from some very nice looking jewelry that you can also come in here and get if you're coming and buying your Nike apparel as well. They have everything here that
they
you
aren't
can
here to
want.
get jewelry, Tyler.
Well, hey, if you're getting a gift for somebody from the apparel side, you can get the wife a nice necklace or a ring or something along those lines too while you're here. They got you covered.
Yeah. All right. Is that what you're doing?
Maybe.
That would be.
My wife's birthday is this weekend.
Well,
so you should have the gift already.
Well, I do have a gift already. I'm not going last minute on that.
Tyler and his wife, they buy each other nice. Have you noticed this, Wes? They buy each other like a trip for every occasion.
She's a better gift giver than I am.
See how long that lasts.
Yeah. She outdoes me quite regularly. I do my best to keep up. I'm trying. Anyways, again, we're out here hanging out for the official Nike release. Come by and see us 9 till noon. Again, Jay Phillips can be out here from 3 until 6 as well. Big recruiting week. We'll get into some of these names coming up in a moment. But I know we've had this conversation before, but as you switch apparel providers, there is something about Nike that obviously resonates a lot with these guys that are 16, 17, 18 years old as they're making their college commitments. Again, you have the opportunity with NIL and all that kind of stuff now, but there's no denying that Nike is the brand that most guys around that age tend to gravitate to. And I'm interested to see, what kind of effect that might have on recruiting going forward for South Carolina.
Yeah, I think if you look at recruiting kind of like a pie or a puzzle, and you just want to be able to fill in as many of those sections as you possibly can. You want to remove obstacles. And so I think most kids aren't picking a school because of Nike, but could it be a tiebreaker for you? Could it be, hey, I love every single thing else about these schools, but one's a Nike school, one's an Under Armour school. Yeah, maybe so. I think you want as many check marks as possible when a potential prospect is looking at your school. Now, I would say in basketball, where I mean it's just different, right? Like there's like a cultural relevance for Nike and basketball that has just been ingrained for decades. And I mean, is that because of Jordan originally?
I'm sure it helped out a lot.
Whatever the reasons, like guys and girls want to play in Nike when it comes to basketball. So I think it helps in football. I think it helps a lot in basketball. Now let's be honest. Like, yeah, the NIL aspect. Who's going to pay you more? That's the biggest decider for a lot of people these days. But in terms of putting yourself in a situation where you can possibly remove one last obstacle, I think is a win for South Carolina, and was probably part of this. Like we know that Don Staley more than likely wanted this move. I think the other coaches, once they realized there was a real opportunity for this change to happen, I think the other coaches were more than willing and ready to get on board with it.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at basketball, I think there was also more of a recruiting tie-in directly with, certain apparel companies. This school is an Adidas school. This school's a Nike school. And quite frankly, that's how some of the money would flow back in the day, based on all that. And there were court cases and people getting in trouble and all that kind of stuff. Nowadays, not as important. But look, I think the proof's in the pudding in terms of, you look at football specifically, Wes, that's the sport we cover the most in terms of trying to know the ins and outs of what's going on. And we know for sure that this is something that South Carolina is showcasing on the recruiting trail. When prospects come to visit, what are you going to do in the year 2026? I mean, yeah, you're going to show them the locker room and the indoor facility and the players lounge and all that stuff, but it's not as important as it was 5 or 6 years ago. Yeah, people want to see it. They want to see that it's good and all that kind of stuff. It's not as important as the NIL aspect. you're going to show them academics. You're going to show them, hey, where will you be living on campus? But one of the things that South Carolina has chosen to showcase is the Nike angle. Hey, you come here, going to be running out game one in Nike stuff. It's new. You can be the first class, and so it's something that they've been showcasing more, and the reception has been pretty positive. Is it going to be? I think that's important. What you said, Wes. Like, is this going to be something where, okay, you're switching to Nike, all of a sudden everybody's signing up to come play for your program? No, that's not the case. But do you want to be at any potential disadvantage in recruiting? Absolutely not. And so to go back to what we were saying earlier, Jeremiah Donati, the AD here at South Carolina, wanted his players to have the best. And Nike is the brand that most players really in every sport tend to gravitate towards.
Well, the month of June was a very good one for South Carolina on the recruiting front. 5 total commitments for the 2027 class. An opportunity over the next couple of days as we get into this month of July serves as an opportunity to bring in even more. A lot of names to know here. We'll run through these, starting with a commitment coming up later on tonight in 5-star cornerback Joshua Dobson, which you'll be able to view on the Rivals YouTube channel. Obviously, anytime you talk about a 5-star, going to be very sought after, and Carolina in the mix for this one.
Yeah, I'll say this too. Go to GamecockCentral.com. We'll have the embed of that stream going on our front page and on our message board as well. We'll be discussing the lead up to that as well. Chris and I'm sure I got off a phone call, Chris, right before we hopped on air. This is one of those you track to the very end. Some recruitments you already kind of know where a guy is going, and other schools have maybe bowed out. This one could go down to the final minute. I think when you're talking about a prospect, especially in today's era, man, when you're this elite and you can command dollars, and schools aren't shy about giving them to you because they know you're an early impact guy. I think elite prospects are probably more valuable to teams than ever out of the high school ranks. And I'm not necessarily talking value in terms of just money. I'm just talking about what they mean to your program. So this is a huge one. As we sit here right now, 9:39 a.m., I lean slightly South Carolina.
I was going to ask what you learned on your phone call.
What? Not a lot yet. I'm actually waiting on that. I'm getting a phone call right now, actually. But I think we'll know more later today.
Yeah.
My feeling, I've always thought South Carolina had a better shot here, even with the ebbs and flows.
Mm-hmm.
I felt the same with Nate Carson,
mm-hmm.
even with the ebbs and flows. So, it is funny to see the schools that South Carolina has battled with here and how that part has changed. And, I think for Carolina, it's one of those things where can you just get to the finish line today? Because is it South Carolina and Michigan right now? Are we in agreement on that? Does Texas A&M take a last swing? Auburn's in the Final Four. I think they're pretty much out. It's those three.
Mm-hmm.
Then we think it's South Carolina and Michigan. But I'm not going to completely give up on A&M until this thing's over.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, it's had ebbs and flows, but South Carolina's been there since Dobson was going into his freshman year, maybe summer of 8th grade when he was playing at Catawba Ridge. Of course, he's playing over the border in North Carolina for his senior year, but for all intents and purposes, this is an in-state guy. This is someone that you've been recruiting for a long time. You've invested a lot of time, and it's, I think the historical aspect is something to think about this as well. South Carolina's obviously got a great track record with DBs, but I went back and looked this morning, Tyler. If they land Dobson, this would be the highest ranked DB that they've landed in the modern era. I didn't go back to 1990 but in that kind of in the last let's call it the last 20-25 years, he would be ranked higher than Stephon Gilmore and a lot of other guys that they had. So would be a huge pickup. And I think one thing, sometimes coming into these decisions, as much as you can, you kind of know what's going to happen.
Right.
The prospect's told, multiple people. He's told the coaching staffs of the schools that he's not picking. Hey, I'm not picking your school. Josh Dobson publicly has said, I'm not going to tell anybody until I go decide. And I think one part of that is that as this decision approaches tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern, he's still very much been hashing out, what am I going to do? And so that frankly makes it a little bit more difficult to call it. And man, we're just seeing nowadays, you know, the notion of people being able to come in last minute. Um, that has always happened in recruiting, but it's happening more and more in this kind of newer, modern, NIL era. But I'll say this, South Carolina's put their best foot forward. If they don't get Josh Dobson, it's not going to be because, from everything we've heard so far, it's not going to be because of NIL.
Right.
It's not going to be because they didn't get him on campus enough. Like they've done, I think, everything they can here. And the biggest thing, Tyler, that I think they've been battling with Dobson is what they've been battling all cycle, and that is, hey, is Shane Beamer going to be here long term? And we've been talking a lot about Jeremiah Donati as it pertains to Nike this morning. Jeremiah Donati's been very involved in this recruitment when Josh Dobson's been on campus. There's at least 2 occasions where Josh has been on campus, including during the official visit where he sat down with Donati. And from everything we've heard, what Josh has even said publicly, he feels a lot better about the stability with the football program with Shane Beamer at the helm. With Torian Gray, what's his status? Because he works for Shane Beamer.
Right.
That's something Donati kind of met head on. And I think the question is, does he feel good enough about that to pull the trigger? I think South Carolina did a lot of good work in answering those questions this past weekend. If you're Carolina, your pitch is, hey, look, you're good enough to go anywhere at any time. If this is where you want to be, this is where you need to commit. And I think that's resonated. So we'll see what happens today. It'd be a huge get.
Again, Dobson announcing tonight at 6 o'clock, which you can watch through the Rivals YouTube channel with Gamecock Central as well. But that's just the beginning of a flurry of commitment announcement, or a flurry of announcements happening over the next couple days. We'll tell you the other names you need to know coming up next to wrap up the hour. Again, live at Gamecock Traditions here on Sunset in Lexington for day 1 of the Nike launch on your Wednesday here on the Game. All right, welcome back in. Extra point. Toadhead, Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, wrapping up hour number one. We're out here at Gamecock Traditions on Sunset and Lexington, breaking in the Nike era for South Carolina. Again, seen tons of people. I got Nick Harvey just left a moment ago with his new Nike brand. He was wearing the shirt out. He bought the shirt and had it on as he was leaving
Oh, he
the
just
store.
put it straight on.
He put it straight on. I'm like,
There's no need to
I
wait.
was like, you are committed to it.
Do you think he walked in with Under Armour and
He-
left with Nike? Like they could do a transition and put it on Instagram.
I didn't think to look at what he was wearing when he came in, but as he was leaving, he had the Nike shirt on. I was like, that's fantastic.
You know how people do those switch videos on Instagram?
Yes.
They should do that.
Absolutely. New era, certainly. We're excited to be out here, as we'll be all morning long. Talking some recruiting here. And again, we'll have time to more dive into all of these guys individually as the show rolls along. We talked about Joshua Dobson, who's making his commitment tonight, 5-star cornerback out of North Carolina. But this starts a flurry of announcements coming in the next couple of days. Tonight, you're also going to get Marquis Evans, the 4-star edge defensive lineman from Alabama. Tomorrow, you've got Davion Jones, a linebacker from Charlotte. Friday, you've got Nate Carson, offensive lineman from Irmo. And then Saturday, you've got Jaden Brody, the 3-star edge from North Carolina. Now, they're not going to get all these guys, but with that many announcements coming in the next couple of days and Carolina being in the mix, you feel good about hopefully getting at least a couple.
Yeah. How many can you get? And so we don't bury the lead on we talked about Dobson last segment. South Carolina has a good shot there. We'll see what ultimately happens. Maybe Wes will have more for us when he comes back.
I say he took a phone call. That's usually a good sign.
We'll see. He probably can't tell us everything on that call, but maybe he'll have. Marquis Evans out of Alabama, South Carolina hosted for an official visit. The buzz is with the in-state school, Auburn, there. So I think, as much as you possibly can nowadays, you might cross him mentally off of your list. But the other guys that you mentioned, Tyler, are all very much in play. So Davion Jones, versatile defensive back. South Carolina thinks he can play any spot in the secondary. Actually going to be playing with Dobson at Huff this year. They're absolutely loaded in the secondary and at multiple positions. But he's a guy that was on campus the same official visit weekend that Dobson was at the end of June, towards the end of June. LSU has had a lot of buzz, but the Gamecocks continue to battle there. And I think that's a commitment that we're going to be paying close attention to. Nate Carson, Wes talked about earlier, and kind of drew a parallel in some ways to Dobson in that South Carolina was there very early. Some other schools have taken turns at the top, near the top, provided great competition. But we ultimately, with Nate Carson, the 4-star offensive tackle from Irmo, local product, we ultimately, as of right now, expect that to circle back to South Carolina on July 3rd. So another potential really good get that they've been recruiting for a long time there. He's been on campus, and this makes sense. He's right down the road at Irmo more times than I can count. And then Jaden Brody's an interesting one, Tyler, because he wasn't really – he was on the staff's radar, right? But in terms of like us talking about him and tracking him, he wasn't really someone that was on our radar. And prime reason for that, didn't have an offer until he came to camp. Last day of South Carolina's camp, day 9, we were out there. We're told to watch out for him, and he put forth a really strong performance. South Carolina really liked his camp workout. He's not the biggest guy in the world in terms of the length. He's more similar to a Brian Thomas Jr. type player. Some people have said, in terms of the measurables, like an Eric Norwood, he's not a 6'5", 6'6" defensive end. But what he has is, from what we saw in camp, some natural pass rush juice. South Carolina jumped in with an offer, and I think very quickly shot up to the top of his board. So things are looking positive there. Carolina wants to continue recruiting some other big-time edges in this class that have, frankly, picked some other schools. Fred Ards, who went to A&M this summer. Chris Whitehead picked LSU. Very much expect South Carolina is going to continue recruiting some of those guys into this season, and with a strong 2026 campaign, maybe have some flip opportunities. But it could, you've already got a couple guys that I think South Carolina is firmly in the lead for, in Carson and Brody going into their announcements. But you could have a huge week if you could end up landing Dobson and Davion Jones.
And as I mentioned, Carolina had a good month of June with 5 total commitments. But when you look at where they rank on 3 at Rivals, still towards the low end of the, in the SEC as of right now. But if you can, again, land a couple of these guys the next couple of days, you should possibly see those numbers jump up a little bit. And again, there's still a lot of time between now and early signing day coming up in December. But we always pay attention to where you sit in the rankings, and I understand people's concern, but hope in the next couple days those numbers will continue to improve as hopefully some of these commitments come in.
Yeah, I mean, if you're look, Carolina's kind of playing the long game in some ways. You've got some, yes, have some guys gone elsewhere. Yes, are they still communicating with some of those guys? Is there some info behind the scenes that points to if South Carolina can prove out, the stability of the program by having a big season in 2026, or a very solid season? Otherwise, can they flip some guys? Yes, and so you don't want to overreact in that way, but
Right.
getting some of these guys this week on your commitment list would certainly be big.
We'll dive into those guys more individually a little bit later on in the show. As we get into hour number 2, we'll get into our 66 days until kickoff countdown. We'll tell you about the number 66 coming up on the other side. I'll talk some A&M later on in the hour as well. As we're broadcasting live at Gamecock Traditions going until noon here on the game. All right, welcome back in. Hour number 2. It is the Extra Point. We're live at Gamecock Traditions on Sunset Boulevard in Lexington as the Nike era is officially underway for South Carolina. And again, we've been watching people come in and out all morning buying their Nike gear. And again, you can come down here and they got T-shirts. They got, how we can't confirm they have hats, visors, polos, jerseys, the whole 9 yards. And as we talked about earlier, new stuff coming in basically every single day. So what you see here is not the end all be all. There'll be more stuff tomorrow and Friday and throughout the next couple of weeks as we break in this new era with South Carolina and Nike. We appreciate everybody at Gamecock Traditions for allowing us to be out here this morning. And again, Jay Phillips going to be out here hanging out from 3 until 6 as well. So come by and see him later on this afternoon if you don't get a chance to get down here this morning. As we get into hour number 2, we're going to talk some Texas A&M coming up in about 15 minutes with Olin Buchanan of Tex Ags as we continue to do our opponent preview like Jack and I have been doing over these past couple weeks. But guys, officially today is 66 days until kickoff. And with the number 66, I'll adjust it to 6.6. Do you have any idea what that could refer to by chance?
I was wondering if we were going to get a Hutch Eckerson question.
Well,
I knew you were going to say his name.
Trivia is not until the 11 o'clock hour. We're keeping that consistent. But Jack and I do a countdown with the number as well in the 9 or 10 o'clock hour. So that's what we're doing here. We're not to trivia yet. That's coming.
Oh.
But if I tell you the number 6.6, what do you think that refers to?
6.6.
No idea. What you got?
Is the average number of wins per season for Shane Beamer. 5 seasons, 33 wins, 6.6 wins per season. And when you kind of look at the projections of what South Carolina is expected to be this year, and again, things change drastically from one season to the next. We've seen that across all of college football. It's right around that 6 to 7 win mark. We talked the other day, Brad Crawford of CBS Sports had Carolina going 7-5. So if I sit here right now and ask you to buy the over or sell the under of 6.5 wins, which way are we leaning?
Buy the over, sell the under?
Yes.
Buy.
Yeah, confidently. Confidently buy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think you got to have some confidence.
Would you have bought that last year too?
Good question. I have to go check the tape. Not probably, but not as confidently.
Okay.
You know, one thing I'm trying to get better at not hedging so much. You know, like you got to kind of make a pick and live with it. You know, but look, here's what I'm very confident in the fact that South Carolina is going to have a better team this season than it did in 2025. Now, the other thing, and this is what I've been telling people, you know, Wes, we're starting to get, we've been getting, and it's kind of accelerating. See somebody you hadn't seen in a while that you know is a big Gamecock fan, and they kind of know what we do for a living and what you think, how they're going to be, what's the record going to be, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And, you know, I always say, look, they're going to be a better team, better club. I'm very confident. The thing is, a lot of teams are really good, you know, and we even saw last year, this point we've been making, Carolina was 4-8, not good enough, huge disappointment. That team was not very good, not good at all in terms of record. They were a problem, right, for other teams. You know, go ask, you know, Alabama. You know, go ask. I mean, even some of the games that got away, you know, early in the Ole Miss game, you know, that was a tight game on the road for a while. You know, go ask Missouri. Like, people weren't saying, oh, we got South Carolina this week, this will be a cakewalk. That team just didn't score in the fourth quarter of 8 games and couldn't get out of their own way a lot. And so you kind of get the sense, like, with this new offensive scheme, rebuild offensive line, if you can get 16 back to the way that he was playing or even close to it in 2024, in a defense that has a lot of pieces back, has added some additional pieces through the portal, you know, you don't have to stretch to see, okay, this will be a better team. But when you look at the schedule and who's on it, there are a lot of other teams that are really good or could be better than expected. There's a ton of talent. And so the biggest thing is just going to be getting over that hump and, you know, playing better in the fourth quarter like they did in 2024. But, yeah, I think there's a path for sure for South Carolina to get past that. You know, if you would have said buy the over, sell the under 8 wins, 9 wins. I'm thinking about that a lot more.
Sure.
But I'm comfortable with that.
I'm buying it for two reasons: Lenore Sellers and Kendall Briles.
Yep.
Like, and to be completely fair, completely frank, you always have to sort through the things you hear locally going into a season. And now, that is not to say that it is always sunshine and rainbows and positive things. Like, sometimes going into a season, you will hear, man, we're worried about this, worried about that. And, we'll see what that discussion looks like once we get into preseason camp and fall ball and all these different things kind of emerging. Have you answered some of the questions you had maybe going in? But, man, being around guys this summer, talking to people who are in the building or around people in the building, there is confidence right now, like, that South Carolina is flying under the radar compared to what their actual ability is. I think the addition of Briles has been a huge aspect of this. I think the increase in confidence for Lenore Sellers and just kind of getting him back to who he was before. I think, I don't know. Last year to me felt like Superman encountering kryptonite for the first time. Like, it's like Lenoris, not that things have come easy, but Lenoris has always been like the baddest dude on every field he's ever stepped on. So not having complete and total success, that can mess with your worldview a little bit.
Sure.
And, every athlete who's ever put on any type of uniform has stepped into a room where they aren't the baddest dude anymore at some point. And so how do you bounce back from that? How do you respond to that? It is huge in terms of an athlete showing their mental toughness. Well, I think all indications are that Kendall Briles has been, and the system has been phenomenal for Sellers from that standpoint. So that it is funny how quickly people will forget the amount of hype around 16 and what he might be capable of going into last season compared to what the national narrative is on Sellers right now.
Well,
Sorry, Tyler. Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, you think back to last year and another team, you can ask if, South Carolina's problem was Texas A&M. That was a historic collapse. But, South Carolina was leading that game, not just leading that game, leading by a lot in that game, as we know. And so kind of get the sense, if South Carolina had just been average, not good, not great, just average offensively in either some of those games or even some of those situations, the fourth quarter in those games, they would have had more wins last season, no doubt about it. And so you're not trying to – you would love for this team to go from not being able to run the ball, very poor on offense for a lot of the year, to great. Yes, you would love that. You might not even necessarily have to get there. And you're not going to do that consistently playing the schedule that they play, SEC plus Clemson, every single year. But can you get that confidence back? Can you run the ball more effectively? Can you score in the fourth quarter? And all the return – they haven't played a game yet. But all the returns that we've heard and seen so far have seemed positive to try to get 16 back on the right track.
And, going back to the Kendall Briles thing, and again, we've lofted a lot of praise to Beamer for making that hire when he did, considering the struggles of the offense a year ago. And look, there are a lot of names that we were talking about, being in the mix before they ultimately ended up hiring Kendall Briles. But I don't know of any other name that was still in college football a year ago that you could have hired that I think would have garnered more buzz than what Kendall Briles is coming into this year, not only for his own track record, but for the type of quarterbacks he's worked with. We talk a lot about KJ Jefferson and the success he had with him back at Arkansas, which is a similar skill set to what Sellers is going to be able to bring, the way the offense works, the way they run the football, the 1,000-yard receiver that he's had in the past. Like, it checks a lot of boxes of what you want to see out of this offense this year. Now, you still got to go out there and obviously do it when play starts here coming up in 66 days. But it is really interesting, how low everybody was and down on everybody was on this team at the end of last year, and how quickly that was able to shift pretty soon in the offseason once the Briles hire was made. And again, we're all anticipating what this offense is going to look like when we finally start playing football here soon.
Well, I think there's two aspects to it. One being that Briles has done it pretty consistently. He actually pretty much everywhere he has been has improved the offense year one compared to what it was prior. And the fact that this is, what you would call a college offense, right? Like, this is not a pro style deal, even though everybody kind of borrows elements. That's a little bit of a I don't know if that language is even accurate anymore, but I think people know from a general sense what you mean when you say a college offense versus like a pro style approach. So, yeah, I think it's been obviously great for Lenoris. It's been great for Matt Fuller. If it, the biggest if in this entire thing is, are you able to keep those first five or so offensive linemen healthy? A lot of people ask about the O line. I think there is some. I think there's some confidence about the first group. I think once you start getting into the depth of that unit, that's where the questions kind of arise, and you know that there's going to be. There's going to be injuries and there's going to be guys banged up. You just really are hopeful if you're South Carolina that you can avoid the big injury.
Yeah, certainly so. Obviously, we're off a little bit of a bumpy start there with Jakari's peak, but expecting him to be back around the beginning of the season to hopefully anchor that left side of the offensive line, which again, we hope, like many things on this offense, is going to be vastly improved from where it was one season ago. So again, 66 days until South Carolina kicks off against Kent State. We'll get into our 66 days trivia coming up in the 11 o'clock hour. But up next, Olin Buchanan of TexAgs.com going to join us to give us some insight into South Carolina's I guess not an annual opponent anymore. The Bonham Trophy will still be up for grabs this year, but that annual back and forth will come to an end. But they'll take on A&M coming up later on the season in November. We'll talk to Olin Buchanan about that coming up on the other side. As again, we're broadcasting live at Gamecock Traditions, going up until noon as we break in the Nike era for South Carolina here on the Extra Point on the Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark. We're broadcasting live from Gamecock Traditions out in Lexington as we welcome in the Nike era for Gamecock football. Going to be out here, or Gamecock Athletics, excuse me, going to be out here all morning long. As again, we've seen so many people coming in, getting their hands on Nike gear for day number 1. So excited to be out here and enjoying this today on July 1st. But these past couple of weeks, we've been previewing South Carolina's opponents day by day, and we turn our attention now to November 7th, where the Texas A&M Aggies will come in to Williams-Brice Stadium as we enter the final month of the regular season. Joining us to discuss the Aggies from TexAgs.com is our guy Olin Buchanan, joining us now on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. Olin, appreciate the time as always, man. How are we doing today?
Doing really well. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. We appreciate it. Real quick, I do have to ask, now that we know the annual opponents every single year, South Carolina and A&M will not play each other every single season starting next year, I believe. How distraught is the A&M fan base that the annual Bonham Trophy battle will not be commencing?
Gosh, that not having that Bonham trophy, I guess that'll make the trophy even more valuable when they actually get to play sometime in the future. But I think they're more distraught about missing out on that trip to South Carolina every other year. I think I know a lot of Aggies that enjoyed staying in Charleston and having a great time. It's hard to find a hotel room in Columbia, so I talked to a lot of Aggies that just enjoyed their stay in Charleston, and some stayed in Charlotte. So enjoyed both of those places.
Is that one of the favorite road trips for the fan base, you feel like?
Yeah, I think it was. I think it has been. Yeah, maybe not sometimes for the result, but yeah, it was. Then Charleston, early in the series, people were staying in Charleston and enjoying it. The first game was on a Thursday, so there was some hotel rooms available in Columbia. But after that, everybody had to, that I know, had to stay somewhere else. And they really enjoyed Charleston. And Charleston started getting pretty pricey. And I know some folks that then started looking into Charlotte and really enjoyed their time there. But I'll take a trip to Charleston anytime I can get one.
Hey, Olin, it's Wes. Appreciate you taking the time. Give us if you can, the 10,000-foot view from the top. Obviously, you guys got your quarterback back. Big year last year, making the playoff. But what are the expectations for A&M this year? What are the kind of just big picture storylines you guys are going to be following as preseason camp begins?
Well, the expectations is to have a good year. The question is how good. I think they're going to have a good football team. But the fact of the matter is A&M lost 4 offensive line starters that were all drafted, and they got to rebuild that offensive line. Now, they've got a really good offensive line coach, and they've done a great job in the past in identifying talent and developing it out of the transfer portal. So they brought in 4 offensive linemen. One of them came from South Carolina, Trevon Ball. Trevon Ball will probably start at right guard. So how are they going to I think the best offensive lines are usually experienced and talented lines that play together a lot. Well, you're going to have entire offensive line, and the only 2 guys that may have played together were Cohen Eccles and Tyree Adams at LSU. They also brought in Wilkin Formby from Alabama. I think they expect at least 3 of those guys to be starters. So, we saw LSU do the same thing last year. They had to replace 4 starters in the line, and they went heavy into the transfer portal. Didn't work out very well for LSU. So until we see what that offensive line is and if it can be better than competent, I think you're looking at A&M and you're saying, that might be an 8 or 9 win team. If that offensive line is able to be good, to be better than just pretty good, then I think they're a team that could still challenge to be in the playoffs. I think if the line is adequate, I think their offense is still going to be explosive with Marcel Reed and Mario Craver, and they brought in Isaiah Horton as a receiver from Alabama, and I think the defense, the secondary should be really good. I think the defensive line will be okay. We'll be wondering about how they're going to replace the production off the edge from Cassius Howell, who's gone on to the NFL. But overall, I think the defense will still be solid.
Hey, Olin, I'm a big fan of Marcel Reed and his game, and I think the progress that we saw him make, just even from a South Carolina perspective, watching him, 2 seasons ago versus last year, and even just putting aside the first half against South Carolina and burying it and playing very well in the second half, leading that comeback. What do you think is the next step in just the development for Marcel Reed going into this year?
Just taking better care of the ball. I think that South Carolina game was you saw the best and worst of Marcel all in one game. In the first half, he's getting sacked and he tries to make a play out of it. That's where it'd be smarter and just take the sack instead of trying to make a play that ended up being a fumble and a touchdown. And he underthrew a receiver in the end zone, right? So you just got to be smarter about and making better decisions. But people don't realize, or maybe they do, but they just seem to forget that was the first year that Marcel was a starter, a full-time starter, and he came in late the previous year. And even then, he was mainly a running quarterback. So, I think that's what of course, does he want to be more consistent throwing the ball? Of course, but here's a guy that threw for over 3,000 yards and rushed for over 500. And I just think that what stands out with Marcel was the 12 interceptions, 6 of them coming, either in the red zone or on the brink of the red zone. So I think it really comes down to just maturing, understanding. Sometimes it's better to take a sack or to run rather than try to force something. So, and I think they might be able to do some things with their offense, maybe a little more tempo that'll help him out too.
Again, Olin Buchanan of Texas joining us here in the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. And we've always known since A&M came into the SEC over a decade ago, they've always had tons of talent. You can go back to the Johnny Football days, Myles Garrett, Mike Evans, guys like that. They've had plenty of resources. They've had what we thought were good coaches in Kevin Sumlin and Jimbo Fisher. Why is it finally starting to seemingly click with everything with Mike Elko, where the team was obviously finally able to make the playoff a season ago?
I think Mike he's more detail oriented than Jimbo and Sumlin ever was. I think he has a plan and he sticks to it. In this NIL day, I think he has a budget and he sticks to it, and he'll tell a guy, look, we're not going to pay you that. You're not going to make that much money here. Maybe you ought to look somewhere else. And, here's what we can do. I think when Jimbo was here, and I think Mike has done a really good job with his staff and letting them do their job, trusting them to do their job. Whereas, Jimbo, he brought in, I think he got kind of lazy toward the end. His first 3 years, he could have been mayor here. But toward the end, when I say lazy, I'd say look at some of the hires he made in strength conditioning coaches, in assistants, in recruiting coordinators and things like that. Sometimes you're just shaking your head and saying, what are you doing here? Maybe some guys had a good resume, but they weren't getting it done here. And, he'd stick with them. I just think Mike Elko, like I said, he has a plan. He's demanding. He holds people accountable. And I think that's what all coaches are supposed to do. And he's really smart. But he's fine delegating. Like, look, I'm going to get in some good coaches and let them coach. And so far it's working out.
Hey, Olin, I know you mentioned him earlier, but just to localize it a little bit for us here in Columbia, what have you heard on Troy Ball? And I think you said seems like there's a pretty decent chance he could be starting. I would imagine at one of the guard spots for A&M this year.
Yeah, I would bet. Don't want to release my inner Texas Tech quarterback here, but I would bet that Trevon Ball is going to be your starter at right guard, and he'll probably be lined up next to Wilkin Formby, the Alabama transfer that I think will be the starter at right tackle. Now, I will say this: A&M had a really good offensive line last year, but the strength of that offensive line was on the left side. Trey Zoom and Chase Basantes. That was the strength of the offensive line. So um, I'm very confident that they can be, with Formby and Ball, at least as good as they were last year on the right side. We'll see.
Olin, man, we appreciate it. Looking forward to the matchup coming up in November. No telling what either one of these teams is going to look like by then, but hopefully, as always, it'll be a fun game. And for Carolina's sake, we're obviously trying to get the nasty taste of what happened last year in College Station out of our mouth. But we'll see what happens.
All right. Well, again, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Olin Buchanan there of TexAgs.com. Again, that matchup coming up on November 7th. Have you been out to Kyle Field? You made that trip yet?
I've never done that one.
You haven't done that one?
Okay. Chris, I'm pretty sure has.
Okay.
I have not.
I think Chris has hit just about all of them at this point, hasn't he?
Close to it, man.
Yeah.
Close to it.
Yeah. It looks like fun. I mean, what 100,000 people there? They've built up a lot in the past decade or so.
Well, and TexAgs, who Olin works for, which is one of probably the top 4 or 5, I might be underselling them, websites in terms of subscriptions out there that do what we do. They have a full, studio. They have a headquarters.
Okay.
Right across. It would be like if, well, I'm not going to give away the company. One of those businesses that is right outside Williams-Brice Stadium, right across the street.
Sure.
It would be like if Gamecock Central had a headquarters sitting right there. That's what Texas has at Texas A&M. So
we need to work on that for you guys.
I mean, that is unheard of.
Oh yeah, no,
that is insane.
I see their stuff, their social media stuff, and they got an impressive setup out there, man. And that just that tells you how big of a deal it is out there in College Station. And as I mentioned, there, obviously Carolina trying to get the bad taste out of his mouth of what happened last year in College Station when A&M does come to town coming up later on this year. We'll switch gears to some non-football stuff. It's a very important day in the sports world. In fact, it's a day we celebrate every single year. We'll tell you about that on the other side as we continue on from Gamecock traditions as we welcome in the Nike era for South Carolina football on your Wednesday here on the Game.
happening was
So
good.
July 1st comes and hits the bank account.
Yes. Yes, it does.
On an annual basis, July 1st, do we have a party? Do we have a cake? Do we
No,
have
but
a,
it's really amazing how I'm probably more famous for that deal than the career I had.
Oh, no. This is not downgrading the great career.
No.
You are like one of the most famous money deals of all time.
Yeah.
July 1st is Bobby Bonilla Day, and I like to say I play a part in it. But
thank you.
You are trending on Twitter every July 1st
Yes.
without fail.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Points. I had Wes Mitchell and Chris Clark. We're live at Gamecock Traditions out here in Lexington, celebrating the release of the Nike apparel for South Carolina. Today's day one of the new apparel contract for the Gamecocks. But there's a lot of reasons to be excited today. And another reason as well, you just heard in the clip there, it's Bobby Bonilla Day as the Mets are already in the midst of a lot of struggles this year. Well, they just had to cut another $1.193 million check to Bobby Bonilla that they will continue to do on July 1st every single year through 2035, thanks to his deferred contract. He's not played baseball since 2001 and still gets a little over $1 million every year on this day. It's got to be a fun thing if you're Bobby Bonilla.
It is, but I'll say this: the older I've gotten, and the longer we've gotten into how much longer do we have, Tyler?
2035, so 9 more years.
We got 9 more years of this thing. The more this deal, which was clearly made fun of from a team perspective for years, the more, though, with inflation and all these other aspects, the more you're like, was this not actually possibly a good deal for both sides? Like,
I think it worked out.
Obviously, for Bonilla, you're like, oh, I get $1 million every single year, which is half that once he takes the taxes out. But you covered yourself.
Sure.
$1 million though to an MLB team at this point is a rounding error,
especially for the Mets that you routinely spend among the most in Major League Baseball, despite the fact they don't win a whole lot.
It is literally chump change sitting in the bank. So, maybe like you do love a deal that both sides can be like, we feel good about that. Maybe in the end it worked out for everybody.
Yeah. What did they owe originally? Wasn't it like $6 million? I think it was $6 million in 2000. And so they end up paying, basically they're going to pay about $30 million out, and that is something I've wondered, Wes. When I was 18, I would have been like, yeah, that's the best deal ever. It is more money, but like, what if he could have taken that in 2000 and invested it? Could he come out better? But it's a good deal for both sides, I think, because you kind of eliminate any of that risk, and you get, I mean, basically a fifth, a sixth of what you were going to get one year, every single year for, 25 years.
His buyout was $5.9 million in 2000, and that's what they deferred with these $1.1 million installments every single year.
They deferred. It was a buyout. They deferred.
It was a buyout they deferred, and the payments didn't start until 2011. So they basically deferred it for a decade. But now they're paying more in the long run. But as we talked about, especially for a team like the Mets, that's nothing in the grand scheme of what they spend every year.
Yeah, and it's nothing compared to what that would have been 20 years ago.
Yeah.
What the value of that money is. So, very, very talk about a key example of knowing thyself. You know what I'm saying? Like, man, I feel like I might blow all this money. Let me just build in a protection for myself. Like,
Not a bad idea.
But pretty smart. Pretty smart.
So as you mentioned, it hits the bank account. It gets a little up, maybe around half of that once the taxes get taken out and all that. If you got $600,000 to spend every July 1st, like, what's the first thing you're buying?
Going to Gamecock Traditions, obviously.
Buying everything they have on the shelf
is the first answer.
I'll tell you the Nike room.
Yeah, the Nike room.
Just the whole room.
The second answer, we're going to Firehouse Subs, clearly.
Yes.
The third answer, I don't know, man. I feel like if you were smart with it, you wouldn't. Here would be the question. What are you buying with the first time that thing hits your account? You know what I'm saying? Like, hopefully you've kind of.
I'm not buying. I'm paying off.
Hopefully hopefully you've stabilized everything at that point.
Sure.
That would be the problem. If you did this deal to protect yourself, but because you had a contract saying this money was coming in, that you use that to get all these lines of credit. You know what I'm saying? And then you ended up in a bad situation. And you could end up in a bad situation anyway, just by using the upcoming payments as collateral for Lord knows what.
Yeah. To my knowledge, I don't think Bobby Vinny is in any kind of crippling debt or anything like that. He seems to be in a good mood about things. So hopefully he's able to just spend that money freely and enjoy it. Because again, he's got 9 more years of this. He'll be into his, I think he's his early 60s now. So he'll be into his early 70s by the time this payment stops. I believe he still also gets 500,000 from the Orioles as well. And that continues for a couple more years too. So
Man,
he's just raking it in on July 1st.
Deferred payments.
Good for him.
Yeah.
I mean, show a different type of deal, but Otani's deal, heavily deferred. I mean, his last 10 seasons, he gets $68 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, he's only quote unquote making like $2 million a year. So that's another very interesting contract.
We'll maybe we'll have an Otani day later down the line when it comes to his deferred payments and that ridiculous amount.
That thing ends in 2043.
Yeah,
that's a weird thing to think about. We're already covering 2029 prospects. Wes.
All right.
So happy
Vince McMahon, wave it off.
Yeah.
GIF.
Yeah. Happy Bobby Bonilla Day to all those that celebrate today. Also, as well, you get the U.S. men's national team in the knockout stage. Take on Bosnia coming up tonight at 8 o'clock. These games count. If you're done, you go home. We've seen some pretty big upsets already with Germany going down the other day. So it's been a pretty interesting first couple of days of the knockout stage. America, of course, winning their group to take on Bosnia, who was third in their group. And obviously, we feel pretty good about America's chances, and we'll see what happens tonight.
Wes, you watching?
I'll be watching. I can't tell you anything about any of it, but we've made it far enough along that I'm like, okay, maybe I should pay attention.
So if the ball goes in the goal, that's a good thing.
All right.
We want to see that.
Christian Pulisic expected to be full go for the whole game, which I'm excited about. I'm full nervous mode.
Okay.
Yeah. I understand. Like, I feel fairly confident, but I'm very, like you said, I mean, heck, if you've watched the games, there's been upsets, been close games. I'm fully nervous.
So we're expected to win tonight.
Yeah.
And that would mean advancing to 16 teams?
Quarters. Yeah, being the quarters if they make it through.
Yep. Round of 16, then it'd be 8 and 4 and all that kind of stuff. But one thing, that America's done so far in the couple games it's played through the group stage is score early, and including even to that loss to Turkey the other day. So they've not gotten used to playing from behind. So I'm wondering, can you get out? Can you score a goal early where you can kind of control the pace of the game from there? Because, again, that's kind of been what they've done through all their games so far.
Yeah, and, second half against Australia, the defense got a little shaky. It was certainly shaky in that last match against Turkey. So that's something I've got an eye on. You're right. You don't want to be playing from behind with the stakes this high. Can you go out, get an early goal, kind of get comfortable? But I'm excited about it.
Yep, that game again coming up tonight at 8 o'clock. That's going to be out at, we can't call it Levi's Stadium. I guess it's Santa Clara Stadium or California Stadium or whatever the FIFA has to refer to it as, because you can't have those corporate sponsorships. But tonight, 8 o'clock on Fox, and here's hoping that America can advance through in their first knockout round game. We'll come back, wrap up hour number 1, as I do each and every week on Wednesday, talk some racing with Jen Jensen as we continue on from Gamecock Traditions on your Wednesday here in the game.
Thank you.
Briscoe charges in, can't make the pass. We're racing in wine country, and Shane Van Gisbergen is the toast of the town. He wins again at Sonoma.
Thank you. Unbelievable job to turn that thing into a race winner.
Come back in, Extra Point. Tyler Head, West Metro Chris Clark, wrapping up the hour here on your Wednesday Live at Gamecock traditions for the Nike unveiling for South Carolina Athletics. Jen Jensen joining me now on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. You just heard there the final call of the end of the race on Sunday at Sonoma, and Jen, absolutely no surprise as he didn't get caught up in a wreck like last week. SVG once again wins his 8th career road course victory and a second on the season for the New Zealander.
You know, it just didn't seem right when he didn't win a road course. So it seems like, you know, everything is reset and definitely not unexpected. You know, and I heard some controversy or I don't know if it's controversy, but how much they were showing about like what he's doing with his feet, with the pedals and everything. And some were saying, oh, that may be giving an unfair advantage. People can watch, but you still have to be able to put that in action. So I think it's fascinating to watch that. I really enjoy it, but I don't think it's just going to magically make other teams better.
Well, and he's so well-versed in doing that from obviously his years racing supercars over in Australia that, yeah, you can watch him all day long, but watching and doing it are two very different things. And, you know, I think back to the days of when like Ron Fellows and Borstead and guys like that would come over as the quote-unquote road course ringers. They did the same thing. Again, I'm sure plenty of people studied their tape as well, but it didn't mean they were going to be able to do it at the same level as those guys did, which is why they had the success that they did too.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, because even watching some of the actions and stuff, there's still a finesse to how he's, you know, just kind of running that throttle and everything. So watching it is one thing, but yeah, putting it into practice. So I still think he's going to remain light years ahead, but people are working to try to catch up with him, no question.
Well, that is the thing on Sunday is it wasn't a, 10-second victory or something along those lines. Chase Briscoe was right there on his bumper, going into the final couple corners. Didn't get quite close enough to try and bump and run or anything like that. You could argue Ty Gibbs maybe had the best car overall. He just ran out of time in terms of trying to get there in those last couple laps. So the field may be slowly catching up, but catching him and passing him are obviously two very different things.
Oh, absolutely. And, I think he definitely gave a good run for it. And I don't know, a few more laps may have actually had a chance to do that, but he did exceptionally well. And I love the fact that it wasn't just totally a runaway for the end.
Well, for those that are sick of seeing him dominate those kind of road courses, no more for the rest of the year. Of course, we don't have the Roval in Charlotte this year, so that's going back to the Oval. So you don't have to worry about him being on a road or street course until probably Coda coming up in the spring if the schedule stays the same. So we won't have to worry about that for the rest of this year at least.
No, at least so we do have that going for us. But he's continuing to improve on his oval game, and I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. Not sure if it'll be this year, but in the near future, I think he's definitely one who will see an oval victory.
Well, and that's what makes things interesting now as we go through the final handful of races before the Chase. He's got his 2 victories. He's earned a lot of points at the road courses and is currently, put himself in the Chase as of now. 14th overall, but can he survive these next basically 2 months between now and when the Chase starts and run well enough at ovals to keep himself in there? I think it's going to be the interesting thing, which is one of the many reasons why I'm glad we're going back to this format, because in years past, hey, he would have won 2 races, we've been locked in, and we wouldn't be talking about this. But now we got to wait and see if he can keep running well enough to keep himself inside that coveted top 16.
Yeah, absolutely, because he's a good 719 is the points where Denny Hamlin sits. Shane Van Gisbergen's at 425. So there's still a long way to fall, and we can see how quickly you can lose points and not stay as dominant in there by looking at like how Tyler Reddick has fared this season.
Well, and that's what makes things interesting. A couple weeks ago when Reddick had, a 3-digit point lead, we thought for sure he had, the number 1 seed locked up for the Chase, but misfortunes these past couple weeks, the tire issue at the end of the race at San Diego, getting put behind early in the race on Sunday at Sonoma. Now, Denny Hamlin had his own issues after he got spun out, but Hamlin now officially takes the point lead by 1 whole point as we head into Chicagoland this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, but it is crazy that you can have a 129-point lead, and then it's just like, wow, what's happened now? I realize he will still make the chase. Or he would have to lose like 40 some points a race, or just basically all but not show up for Reddick to still be in the championship conversation. But it just goes to show how important every week is to every one of the drivers.
Well, as I mentioned, we go to Chicagoland this upcoming weekend. Now, did I hear it correct? Are you going to be there on Sunday?
Actually, we are going to be there, so I'm heading that direction, and we're really looking forward to it. It hasn't been run there since 2019, so I think it's going to be kind of fun. I know there's some tire testing that's going to be going on tomorrow and Friday, so that might give teams just a little bit of a sense of how the track has changed or anything like that. But I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, we look at what tracks have been really good in this next gen era so far, and it's the multi-groove 1.5 miles where you can run from the bottom to the top, and that's exactly what Chicagoland is. So I'm assuming we're going to be in for a pretty good show on Sunday.
I sure think so. Good passing opportunities. That triable makes things a little bit different with the way the banking is, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a great weekend overall. They're going to have 3 series there, and I'm just kind of excited about seeing the race. I've never been.
Oh, so you haven't been to the track before? Okay, I was just about to ask.
Not
about
that one. Nope, never been to that one.
Well, here's hoping it's a good crowd. We don't know what the future is past this year. There's some rumors about the street race in Chicago coming back, so Chicagoland kind of up in the air. So hopefully a good crowd and a good race that can keep it on the schedule going forward.
Yeah, I would like to. I think it's kind of nice. I mean, I know people enjoy seeing street race and all of that, but just have some good, solid intermediate track ovals. I think those are just what fans really, really want.
Absolutely. Well, enjoy the weekend. Again, hopefully it's a fun race, and we'll break it down next Wednesday.
Sounds great.
Jen Jensen there joining me on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. 2 hours in the book. 1 more hour to go. Is broadcasting live from Gamecock Traditions out here in Lexington as we welcome in the Nike era for South Carolina athletics. We'll get back into what they have here, what we've seen so far this morning as we get into hour number 3 coming up next here on the Extra Point on the Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris, who've been broadcasting all morning long out here at Gamecock Traditions on Sunset Boulevard in Lexington, welcoming in the Nike era for South Carolina Athletics. Day one of the contract, your first opportunity to come down here to Gamecock Traditions and buy official Nike gear. Again, when we got here this morning, we went over, there's a whole room, by the way, an entire room dedicated to nothing but the Nike apparel with t-shirts, hats, visors, jerseys, jackets, everything you can imagine. And as we mentioned earlier, guys, what you see today isn't everything. There's going to be more stuff coming in tomorrow and later on this week and next week. And it's a rollout process. So an opportunity for you to really stock up before football season gets here and all the respective sports. Again, you can buy basketball shirts, baseball shirts, and all that kind of stuff. And man, just exciting. A lot of positive vibes around this Nike deal officially kicking off today.
Yeah, we're going to hear from Scott Satterfield later in the show here at Gamecock Traditions. I don't want to put numbers in his mouth, so I'll let him tell you guys, but I was chatting with him a moment ago, and apparently they get an alert when an online order comes in. So at like midnight last night,
Okay.
I was talking to Kevin back there. He said that his phone was just doing like the bzz, 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 bzz of and they had high expectations.
Sure.
But I believe has exceeded their expectations in terms of Gamecock fans buying up this gear. They compared it to when they first released the South Carolina Baseball National Championship apparel in 2010, and they did a big release for that. Said very similar vibes to how that's gone. And also worth mentioning, since we're sitting here at Gamecock Traditions, if you buy something from them online, that means they have that item here in the store.
Right.
It exists. You're not buying the opportunity to buy something. Some online retailers, you will be buying something, but you may get it. You get it when they get it. If you buy it on the site, it already exists, and they're going to ship it to you.
Yeah, and again, appreciate them having us out here. This is actually a pretty significant day across college for sports. College football is a lot of schools switching their apparel providers. The Carolina is the only one going to Nike. You have Georgia Tech going to Under Armour from Adidas. You have Tennessee going from Nike to Adidas, as well as Penn State doing the same thing. Saw some Penn State fans. They were upset apparently about the shade of navy blue for their uniforms. They feel like that what they've rolled out today maybe looks more like Notre Dame. So the shading is always very important, as people have brought up with the Nike and making sure they get the garnet correct, which looking at it this morning looked like they did a good job of that. And as talked about as well, no major overhauls to the jerseys as of right now. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen. This is a process, and this is a decade-long contract. But for year number one, it looks, at least for football uniforms, pretty similar to what we've seen just now with the Nike swoosh on it instead of the Under Armour logo.
Just saw another guy walking in with Under Armour, walking out with a big bag. Nike stuff. He didn't put it on.
A lot of people have, actually.
Yeah, but a lot of people have actually put it on as they leave the store.
I mentioned
transition.
I mentioned a guy, Nick Harvey, did that, and like 4 or 5 other people I've seen walking out with the Nike shirt already on. I'm like, man, you can't wait, man. It's day one. You gotta jump on it as soon as you can.
Yeah, but back to your point, Tyler, about the football uniforms. Yeah, I think, and I'm actually written something on this we're going to put out later on Gamecock Central. There has been a lot of talk around social media as they, South Carolina football put out this morning a picture of the black jerseys, and people are going, oh, they don't look very different. Again, and Wes talked to Jeremiah Donati about this as well. If you actually look at the structure of the agreement, if you look at Donati's comments, they're not, Nike is not significantly overhauling the actual design of the jersey in year one, but there are options that I expect South Carolina to take for redesign within the first few years of the agreement, which, as you said, Tyler, runs for 10 years. There's also an option to create a completely unique to South Carolina alternate uniform jersey design as well. So this is not the end all be all with what you've seen so far from the jerseys. They're going to kind of keep it a little bit more classic for now, but we might see some different stuff, including a full alternate down the road.
Yeah, and there's some people that have been bringing up comparison pictures on Twitter and stuff this morning. I will say the Gamecock football Twitter account officially has released the photos of the black jersey so far, kind of on a mannequin, so you get a better idea of what it looks like under shoulder pads and stuff like that. I will say the numbers look bigger. I'm a big number font guy. So you have block numbers that take up more of the chest than like what you've had with kind of more of the skinnier numbers in the past couple of years. So that is a slight tweak. You still got the stripes on the shoulder, but for the most part, I think everything looks pretty similar, at least for your number one. In the release video that the athletic department as a whole put out, we saw glimpses of the basketball jerseys and stuff like that, and they look pretty similar as well for the time being. Again, all that can be subject to change, but again, no massive overhauls on that stuff, at least not as of yet.
Yeah, and that's kind of just part of the plan, I think. And you didn't want to just completely come in and scrap everything you had done. I'm as curious, and I'll be honest, guys. The stuff people notice about uniforms, like my brain just does not work that way. Like it doesn't pop to me. It doesn't stand out to me. So, like a lot of these universities that are changing brands have dealt with some just pretty nasty feedback. You mentioned Penn State, Georgia Tech. Lots of talk about people just not liking their uniforms at all. They have their colors are different now too. So the some of these rollouts have actually not gone that smoothly. I feel like, and man, you guys know, Gamecock Nation, very passionate. I feel like for the most part, it's been positive, and some of that's probably just that South Carolina fans, many of them have wanted Nike for a long time now. But I am most interested, if you want to look big picture, to what an alternate uniform might look like under the Nike umbrella, and how how they could get creative with some different areas. I have always wanted a Palmetto State uniform. As we're staring at that blue right there,
Yep,
like a Palmetto State flag design as a one-off home game, that would be obviously a complete far cry from your normal colors, but
sure,
kind of like this is the state university for South Carolina, and to just lean into that for one night. That's always been something I've thought would be just awesome.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I wonder what people would think about that, because there would be some people. It's not the colors,
But
that would be.
But think about it, man. Palmetto State people, for the most part, are pretty proud of the state of South Carolina.
Absolutely.
And most people love, they love that blue.
sure,
And they actually love the logo on the flag. So it's been so just synonymous with. Now you could maybe I don't know, you could maybe incorporate the flag. We see it on a lot of hats. You can maybe incorporate the flag design and not go all in on a blue uniform for the game. Somebody way more creative than us and better at graphic design from us could maybe accent that blue and make it look right with Garnet. I don't know. But that point being, though, guys, there's 100 different ways you could take that. And most of the alternate uniforms, man, people either love them or hate them.
Yeah.
You get every opinion and everything in between.
Yeah, well, we talked about the Wounded Warrior stuff from the earlier Under Armour days. Was this the point of a lot of controversy, and what they couldn't wear them for the one game because the numbers weren't transparent enough. So hopefully we don't run into that kind of situation. You're right. It is interesting, and I pulled it up, the helmet history, just to make sure. But yeah, they've never worn anything that featured the Palmetto, at least on the helmet, which is kind of surprising. And again, it's something that's featured on the field, featured in the end zone now, and all that kind of stuff. Some kind of alternate like that, whether you do it with that blue or just keep it with the traditional colors of garden and black, would be something really cool that we'll see. This is the point where now we can all speculate and imagine, right? And people do mock-ups and do their own versions of things until Nike officially releases something. We know that's coming at some point. When exactly, we don't know, but that's the next thing you can dream about, I guess, with this deal is what Nike's going to do for that alternate when it does ultimately come.
Yeah, subtle changes this year. They've been rolling out a lot of stuff today, guys. It's almost overwhelming. There's at least first that I've seen publicly, first rendering of the outside of Williams-Brice Stadium as well is out there now. And, you don't get a complete look at every side of the stadium, but I guess that would be the west side. rendering is out there now featuring a look that is kind of a modernized version, you would say, of the way the stadium has traditionally looked, because it is a unique stadium from the outside in terms of how it is structured and how it's shaped. And I think what they wanted to do is to kind of modernize it a little bit in terms of that, while also not just making it a cookie cutter type stadium.
Yeah. Also today as well, with the rollout of Nike, they've officially announced their Blue Ribbon Elite NIL athletes, 5 of them for South Carolina, 3 from football with Lenore Sellers, Nick Harbor, and Dylan Stewart, as well as 2 from women's basketball with Chloe Kitts and Joyce Edwards as well. And guys, as you brought up, we kind of think about, hey, if you want to list the 5 biggest names in South Carolina athletics right now, those would probably be the 5. And again, this is an opportunity that Nike allows to do these NIL deals in what they kind of categorize their more elite category, which can be really cool to see, what these guys can be able to do. As you mentioned earlier, they're getting the opportunity to have some input on some products as well. So maybe we could have some individualized, Sellers or Harbor or Joyce Edwards or Chloe Kitts type of merch. We'll see, but a really cool opportunity that, again, kind of the best of the best we think of with Gamecock Athletics getting to do with this new deal as it starts today.
Yeah, those 5 make a lot of sense, I think. And, I think those are just kind of already national level athletes. Like, people know who those 5 student athletes are. So to go ahead and, expand what they're able to do, expand kind of their platform, if you will. I look at those deals too. Good for those athletes, but good for Nike as well. Like, let's not shortchange those 5 athletes. Like, that's a deal where you're looking at it and saying, this is what NIL was like originally designed to be. And that's like where you're getting a return on investment if you are a business entering a contract with one of these athletes. So I think that's good for all those guys. And I think it goes back to one thing Donati told Gamecock Central was he kept using the phrase brand amplification. And so I think for them, different, if this was 20 years ago, if you're South Carolina, you were looking for probably which deal is going to just provide us the most cash on hand. Like, which deal is going to bring in the most money, period. If you're South Carolina this time when you were negotiating this contract, it was more about brand amplification and which of these opportunities with the different apparel companies could take your current brand and potentially take it to another level. And that is kind of the approach that South Carolina took with it.
A lot of exciting things happening with day 1 of the Nike contract. And again, we're hanging out here going up until noon for this show. Jay Phillips will be out here from 3 until 6 as well. So if you're coming in today to get your hands on Nike gear for day number 1, you can come hang out with us as well. We are 66 days away from kickoff, 66-day countdown trivia coming up next as we continue on with the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs, live from Gamecock Traditions in Lexington on your Wednesday on the Game. And Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler and Chris at the table right now. Wes is deciding on a shirt on the other side there. We steered him towards the more lower profile type of thing. You have a lot of options. There are the shirts that are very busy, a lot of text, a lot of graphics on them. Think we're kind of in agreement. We like the more simple type of stuff.
That is my preference.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Seems like that's what we're rolling with.
Yeah. That is.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah.
I do like the stuff that has the retro chicken on it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some of that in the Nike room.
There you go. Yeah, show it to the camera.
Video, folks, see.
Now is that the like the workout material?
Yep.
Nice.
Yep. Dry fit, is that what they call it?
Yeah.
I can't see.
Good stuff.
Legend tee.
Okay. Now we talked about this earlier. You are wearing your Under Armour Gamecock Central polo.
This is dry fit.
We need to get you guys switched over now.
Well,
to be in line with everything.
I wore this purposely today. Figured, maybe for the final time.
Sure,
so,
maybe so. Maybe
Shu, if
so.
you're listening, let's go Nike as well. Let's make the move.
Well,
too.
you got to be official, right?
Yeah.
That actually, people have requested that shirt that you're wearing in the past, Wes. So maybe if we get a Nike version,
Maybe so.
Maybe we can.
You actually used to be able to buy this shirt at Gamecock Traditions.
Oh,
yes, that's true.
This actual Gamecock
we could auction that off. The
we're
Wes
not
Mitchell
doing
official worn Gamecock
Get Wes
Central
to
polo.
sign
Get
it.
like a show worn shirt.
All right,
Yeah, it's
all
a
right,
game worn, show worn.
All right.
Yeah, I bet we could get some people to bid on that.
All right. Tell us your Hutch Eckerson question.
It's not a Hutch Eckerson question.
I researched him, so
You researched him, really? Okay.
So I decided to get a little more creative with this one. So I've been talking a lot about bowl games here recently. Fun fact, Steve Spurrier's 66th win as South Carolina's head coach came in a bowl game. Which one was it?
Ooh. 66 win at South Carolina.
Mm-hmm. Have to do some mental math here.
That hurts. Why do I feel like? Did you recycle this question from last year?
I don't think so. I've tried to come up with unique questions this year. I don't think I used it last year.
How many? South Carolina averaged about what 6-7 wins early in the Spurrier tenure.
You had 05 to 09, which is 5 seasons. And if you say they averaged, let's call it 7 for now, without going through it.
Yeah,
35.
You're around 7-ish.
Okay.
So you're
barely
like halfway. You're a little over halfway there, but
Yep.
then you're going to start climbing quick at some point.
Yep. Then you get 2010, make the SEC title game. Then you get 11 to 13, where you got a total of 33 wins. So that's a good one.
Now, do you guys know how many total games he won here off the top of your head?
I do not remember that number.
Because I feel like if you know that number, that'll make this a whole lot easier.
Well,
Is it 70 something?
No, not 70.
all right, we got to take a stab at this thing at some point.
You're asking for the bowl game.
I'm asking for what bowl game did Steve Spurrier earn his 66th win as South Carolina's head coach?
The Outback Bowl.
Which Outback Bowl?
The 20. We just went over this
We were talking about all those bowl games. I was getting
because
confused.
we were
I
getting
was
confused with
Nebraska and Wisconsin and
the 2012 Outback Bowl.
Technically, it happened on January 1st, 2013, but it was the 2012 season. That is correct.
Well,
that was his 66th
you get
career
a point?
win. Yes.
Yeah, you get a
Yeah,
point.
yeah,
you get a point.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah, the bowl games occurring in January can make you confused. But yes, the 2012 season where they did win 11 games, that 11th win was in the Outback Bowl. It was his 66th career win here at Carolina. He won 86 games.
Yep.
So if backtracked 2 wins in 2015, 7 wins in 2014, 11 wins. That's 20 total. So you would have taken 20 from those last 3 years and would have brought you to 13 Outback Bowl.
Okay.
So significant in a lot of ways.
So
Yeah.
Wes has now got, if I'm not mistaken,
I'm on a roll.
Three straight days.
Yes.
One of them gifted.
He was
but still.
assisted the other day.
Well, let me throw a shout out on Twitter and said that he was the anonymous texter.
Okay.
Out, Chad.
It's now a half-point lead, Chris. You're crumbling right now.
I am.
Yeah.
I am on a bad
Apparently,
run.
I'm the Phillies and Chris is the Braves.
I
right
guess
now.
so, man. Oh, by the way, another tough one last night. That wasn't fun to
We
watch.
won't go there.
Yeah.
I need to come armed with a 65.
You
all
do?
my 65 research for tomorrow.
Do you have any 65 suggestions?
Oh boy.
Any
We're still
65s that stand out? See, now we're in the offensive lineman numbers, which is where things kind of get, because again, you can
Can't
have
really do stats.
Yeah, you can have notable offensive linemen, but it's like, all right, you can't always pull a stat for those kind of guys.
I mean, Jacarius Peak is number 65 this year.
That is true.
Not played a snap yet. So I don't know if we want to do any NC State trivia for Jacarius Peak. So I have a feeling you're going to have to come up with. You're going to have to get a little creative on this one.
Okay, I can try that.
And I don't feel good about my chances.
Well, don't knock yourself before we even get there.
Wasn't yes he was. RJ Houston was 65 last year.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
RJ Newsom trivia.
I'd say didn't do a ton here.
1 year in Columbia.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to get
good luck.
creative.
Good luck,
Yeah.
Tyler.
Maybe I'll go back to the 1965 team and unearth something interesting.
Okay.
See, I'm proud of myself of not having to do that as much this year. I've been trying to steer away from, because again, especially as we get into the 60s and 50s and stuff, like, all right, I don't think we can dive too much into what happened with those seasons, but I've been trying to steer away from that as much as possible.
Maybe you come up with instead of the season, maybe it's a stat. So and so had 65 yards in this game.
Well, see, like yesterday, the thing with Demir Bird, that was a 67-yard drive that he scored a touchdown on in the same Outback Bowl. So yeah, Google has helped me out a lot. I'll say that much.
Wes was dialed into that era, the Spurrier, Golden Years era, Demir Bird, Outback Bowl.
By the way, do we know why he changed his number prior to that game?
I want to say it somehow involved Nick Jones. I think didn't Nick change his number or something too, and maybe those guys were switching numbers around, and I don't know. It was some those guys all wore different numbers at different times in their career. Didn't Ace take number 1 at some point after Alshon had it? Like there was.
Yeah, I remember Nick Jones changed from 10 to 3.
And then I think Demir took 10. Yeah, maybe because Nick took 3. But what was Demir before 10?
Demir was he was number 1 at one point. Yeah, at least at one point. So yeah, they switched a lot. I don't know why. I don't have to.
There you go. Well, now we kind of know. So there you go. 6 days until kickoff, and Wes has closed the gap to half a point with our 65-day countdown trivia coming up tomorrow to wrap up the week. We won't be here on Friday. We'll get back in recruiting coming up next, as a lot of announcements happening in the course of the next couple days. We'll tell you about those names coming up next as we continue on from Gamecock Traditions out here on Sunset Boulevard in Lexington, going up until noon here on The Game. All righty, welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler and Chris along with you here on your Wednesday, again, hanging out at Gamecock Traditions on Sunset and Lexington. We're going to talk with Scott Satterfield coming up here in about 10 minutes as he gives us the details on what this Nike day one release has been like for the store and for him. Is again, I've seen so many people come in here today and buy their Nike stuff and get a jump start on this new era for Gamecock athletics. And Chris, as we kind of talked about earlier, as we get into this recruiting conversation, that Nike swoosh resonates a lot with 16, 17, 18-year-olds, and it's not going to be the end all be all of why somebody chooses your school, but can it be a deal breaker? Possibly.
Yeah, it's all about advantages in recruiting, and it used to be, if you go back to the kind of pre-NIL era, there were some things that could weigh in your favor, and it depends on the kid, the family, but, conference affiliation, obviously program success is, of course, even still now a big one, a big differentiator. Is your program consistently competing in the college football playoff? Those things help. When you can start from that point, it's easier to talk about the other stuff. But, it used to be that. It used to be more facilities, academics, things like that. Now, obviously, you add in not just NIL contracts, but massive NIL contracts for players when you're talking about high school recruiting, haven't actually played a snap at your school. And so that's created an interesting dynamic. And, I don't want to give the impression that an apparel provider is going to provide some huge advantage in recruiting, right? But can it help you a little bit? Can it be a differentiator when you're stacking up your program against, someone else? Maybe a bit, and again, we were talking about this in the 9 o'clock hour. South Carolina is certainly highlighting this on the recruiting trail. They're showing prospects, what will this look like? You can point to the fact that, hey, if you come to South Carolina as a Nike school and, wear the chassis and the cleats that 75% of NFL players are wearing, that is something that resonates. Is it going to be a reason that a kid picked your school? The reason? No, frankly, you probably don't want kids,
right?
If that's going to be their main thing. I've never heard that. I like that they're a Nike school. I like that they're an Adidas school, Under Armour school. I'm going there for that reason. You don't hear that, but is it something you can use? Absolutely.
I've never heard somebody use the word chassis referring to uniforms before. That's definitely
in the contract. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, it is in the contract.
Chassis.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting.
I wouldn't.
I always think about it when with cars, yes, but never uniforms.
Yes.
So there you go. Speaking of recruiting, by the way, as you mentioned a little bit earlier, got a lot of announcements being set to be made over these next couple of days to hopefully bolster South Carolina's 2027 class. It all starts tonight. 5-star cornerback Joshua Dobson out of the Charlotte area is going to be announcing his commitment tonight at 6 o'clock on the Rivals YouTube channel. You can also watch that through the Gamecock Central stream as well. And anytime you talk about a 5-star, that's going to garner a lot of people's attention. We were in the Nike room earlier and somebody was asking you about this and where do you feel like South Carolina lands on this? And as you mentioned earlier, it seems like he's keeping it pretty tight-lipped. So we'll all be waiting to see what he decides later on tonight.
Yeah, Josh has said publicly, I'm not going to tell the schools, in advance. It sounds like, based on some checking that we've even been doing this morning, that's indeed the case. And it seems like he's gone, Tyler, into full decision-making mode. This is the time I'm going to sit down. I'm going to hash it out. I'm going to talk with my family. I'm going to get this thing figured out. And, if you're South Carolina, I think you do have some potential advantages here with a kid like Joshua Dobson, who, again, playing his senior year right over the border in the Charlotte area at Huff High and Cornelius, but it is really an in-state prospect. And so this program, he has some affinity for this program. They've been recruiting him for literally years. I think they first got involved as a freshman, high school freshman at Catawba Ridge over there. Has a really good relationship with the staff. South Carolina this is not one where if Josh Dobson picks another school that you can point to it and say, well, this other school just had a better NIL offer. This is a situation where South Carolina is going to be not only extremely competitive, but I think they're not going to let NIL be the deciding factor for Josh Dobson. So a lot of that factor is even or even slanted, tilted in South Carolina's favor, but he's considering a lot. Josh is obviously a big time player. He's got a great family structure, helping him with the decision. I think the South Carolina pitch has resonated with him, but he's also looking at this long term. He's not just looking at football. He's talked a lot about development. It's very important to him, but he's also looking at this as, a 40-year decision. And frankly, I think that's why Michigan's pitch has resonated to him, the whole kind of quote unquote Michigan man, long term decision. That's resonated. They did a really good job on their visit. But for South Carolina, I think it was really important to get that last official visit. Josh said a while back earlier this year, giving South Carolina the last visit for a reason. And it was, of course, critical for South Carolina to actually get him to follow through with that, take that last visit, keep his decision timeline. And he's done that. So we'll see what happens. I think South Carolina's got a good shot, but I really don't think we're going to know for sure until this evening.
Again, 6 o'clock tonight. You can watch that through Gamecock Central or on the Rivals YouTube channel to see where Josh Dobson's going to announce his commitment. If he commits to Carolina, he would obviously become the immediate headliner of the 2027 class. But it starts a string of commitment announcements coming in the next couple of days. Another one coming up tonight, Marquis Evans, the edge defensive lineman from Alabama. You got another 4-star, by the way. Another 4-star and linebacker, Davian Jones, teammate of Dobson's up there in the Charlotte area, announcing tomorrow. Nate Carson, the offensive lineman out of Irmo, coming up on Friday. And then edge Jaden Brody coming up on Saturday out of North Carolina will be announcing where he's going to be playing college football as well. So, again, the month of June, very busy for Carolina, getting in 5 commitments. Probably not going to get all these guys, right? You have to temper your expectations a little bit, but if you can reel in at least a couple here, it will build on what's been a very positive summer so far for recruiting.
Yeah, I think, to take one maybe off the board, not that it's done, but Marquis Evans out of Alabama, the state of Alabama, the 4-star edge or defensive lineman. Gamecocks have liked him as a tackle. He also took an OV that same weekend that Joshua Dobson was in. I do think the in-state program, Auburn, has all the buzz going into that decision. The Gamecocks are in the game and or leading for all of the other guys. We talked about Dobson. Davion Jones, South Carolina's picked up some buzz there. Even this morning, LSU had been the leader for maybe the matter of a few weeks there, but the Gamecocks have been battling. Certainly have an opportunity to grab him. He'll be a teammate of Josh Dobson at Huff this season. Gamecocks think that he can really play anywhere in the secondary, corner, nickel, safety. They really like his versatility, and they've been recruiting him for a long time too. And then you look at the other guys, Jaden Brody, he came onto the radar pretty late this summer, came to camp, got an offer. He's not a 6'5", 6'6" edge, but he is a guy that has kind of natural pass rushing ability. And Gamecock staff really liked or loved, in fact, his workout. And once they got involved, I think quickly shot to the top of his leaderboard. And then, you look at Nate Carson, and we're talking about Dobson, how long South Carolina's been recruiting him. Nate Carson over at Irmo down the road, local 4-star offensive tackle. He's someone that, you kind of got the sense of, hey, if South Carolina can get the last visit there, which they did, last official visit, he's been someone that has had a lot of teams either leading or at the top for him. And a lot of times, frankly, Tyler, it was the school that he had visited last. And so I think it was really important for Carolina to get him back on campus, get that last at bat, that last swing at him. And it seems like they knocked it out of the park and have kind of all the buzz with Nate Carson going into his July 3rd announcement.
Well, and if he were to commit to South Carolina, that would be only the 3rd in-state guy they've gotten in this 27 class so far. And Beamer always talks about, priority number 1 is getting the talent out of the state. We've gotten a few, obviously, but the more the merrier with that. And we'll see, obviously, what happens in the next couple of days. And we'll see how that affects, obviously, where Carolina stands right now in the overall recruiting ratings, because they're still on the low end of the SEC. But if you can pop a couple of these guys in the next few days, they'll certainly help increase those numbers when it comes to the team rankings on Rivals, On 3, places like that.
Yeah, it'll certainly pretty up what the class looks like. And, something we've talked about, the Gamecocks are playing the long game here with some guys. One of the guys you're talking about in-state recruiting, you got Trey Segar, the running back out of Burns, sitting there at number 2 in the state. Yes, he's committed to LSU, but the thought is South Carolina's got more than a decent flip opportunity this season if the season goes well.
Right.
It's a couple guys in the in-state class that South Carolina bowed out of. there's some guys they're not going to get. They're not going to get Jaden Bryan. He's going to Miami. Seth Tillman from Rock Hill, I think very much leaning towards Clemson. So some guys in the class, in the in-state class for 2027 that the Gamecocks didn't push for, but the ones that they are pushing for, they do have an opportunity to add a few of them down the stretch. So going to keep recruiting some of these guys that have committed other places, chosen other schools, but you have an opportunity to add Nate Carson. You have an opportunity, Tyler, to, we were talking about this. Yeah, Josh Dobson plays in North Carolina. You kind of still count him in state, frankly, because he's played in the state of South Carolina every season except for this coming one as a senior.
Well, here's hoping things get rolling well tonight with the Dobson announcement. It can be a good couple days for Gamecock recruiting. We'll talk to our guy, Scott Satterfield of Gamecock Traditions, coming up next as we wrap up the hour and the show on your Wednesday here on The Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler and Chris, we've been hanging out all morning long here at Gamecock Traditions on Sunset Boulevard in Lexington for the official release of South Carolina's Nike gear on day number 1 of the new contract. Our guy Scott Satterfield of Gamecock Traditions hanging out with us now to wrap up the show. First of all, Scott, thank you for having us out here. As we've said many times, so many people coming in and out trying to get their hands on the Nike gear on day number 1. Great selection that you guys have there in the back. And, man, it's been an exciting morning so far.
Launch day has been absolutely overwhelming, but it's been a good day.
So, Scott, here's something logistically I'm interested in. You know, obviously you guys have known this is coming for a while, and you and your team have been getting ready here. I mean, what all has gone into a transition like this?
So back in November, well, we started with the orders in October.
Right.
That's when the Nike rep came in, trying to pick all the different things or whatever. With Under Armour, we started in November discounting it, and then we worked a discount. And so right now we have virtually nothing left in Under Armour, which is a good thing. And the merchandise has been rolling in since the end of May, but we've been told by Nike many a time it cannot be shown. Do not let it. So we've had it behind curtains, sealed doors, everything else. And it was nice to pull the curtain down yesterday.
No doubt.
Has it been hard to kind of keep those things tight-lipped? I'm sure you've been asked by a million people, like, hey, what's it look like?
I've had people come in and saying, just let me look. I won't tell anybody. I promise. No. But Nike has a big enough stick that's not the kind of thing that we want to mess up with.
So what, you guys opened early this morning.
Yes.
Earlier than usual. It's been a great day out here so far since even I got here in the 8:30, something like that. There are already tons of people milling in and out of the store. Some of the people, Scott, literally came in with their Under Armour stuff.
Yep.
And then they were leaving the store, and they've not just got a bag, but they've got their Nike gear on when they leave. Like they can't wait, change out of it, do the transition. But I know online orders is obviously a big part of this too. And you and I were talking earlier, this thing flipped at midnight. Y'all, I think, saw a lot of online activity too.
10 minutes, we had we had 700 people on the site. 20 minutes, we had 106 orders. When we opened the door, we had right at 400 and something. I think now we're probably at like 750 or 800 orders that have come since midnight. It's insane.
This has been something people have been anticipating for a long time. I've been doing this job here for about 4 years, and everybody was wanting the Nike deal to happen. Again, it gets announced for football season last year. As you mentioned, things start rolling for you guys all the way back in the fall last year. And now the day's finally arrived, and we certainly can't wait to see, the jerseys and stuff on the field. You have the opportunity to buy it here so you can have the proper apparel for game number 1 coming up here in about 2 months.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because they call it a cascading rollout. Basically, most stores or most schools will launch around 8/1, but because the Under Armour ended on 7/1, that's when we do it. Well, they don't have all their stuff in. So the cascading rollout means that we're getting some jerseys, we're getting some T-shirts. Well, we have a ton of stuff, but we have a whole lot more coming in than what we have now.
And just for clarity, because Wes, we were talking about this during one of the breaks. If somebody orders something online from you right now here at Traditions, they're getting it, right? It's not hey, well, this might come in at some point. Like if they order it, they're getting it.
Yeah, and we talk about a lot of times when a person sees they order something and a website says direct from manufacturer, that means it's coming from the manufacturer and it'll come whenever they decide to send it. When you order from us, what happens is we have the items in stock. We don't put items that we don't have. Now, like today, we've had such a run. We could actually oversell what we have, but we got more we're following up with. So one of the things about us being a local store, us being, Gamecock fans too, we're already on the phone ordering stuff today to reorder what we sold out of. So it's going to be coming back in on a regular basis. We're going to take care of the customers. I mean, we just will.
Scott Satterfield of Gamecock Traditions joining us here for a couple more minutes as a wrap up the show at the store here on your Wednesday. Is this one of the busiest days you've ever had at this store?
This would equal the national championship when Carolina won the baseball championship.
Wow.
When the orders went, I'm not going to lie to you. At 12 o'clock, I'm like, okay, you're nervous. You don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it's like bing, 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 and you see the orders coming through. Well, then by 12:30, 1 o'clock, it's like, I can't go to sleep. How are we going to fill all these orders? And I always think of that UPS commercials about, they go live and all of a sudden you see all.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of how it was today. So yeah, it's been extremely busy. One of the busiest we've ever had.
So you're rocking one of the white pinstriped logo with the Block C, the Nike logo. I've gone in the Nike room several times, and I've picked out a few things that, I was telling Tyler, the one with the baseball, home plate design. That's one of my favorites. What are you thinking about keeping for yourself as a Gamecock guy?
Well, the idea of I like polos, and we've got like 16 new polos that are supposed to be here, I think, within the next week to 10 days. So I'm waiting to see what comes in those. But there's I think there's some iconic, just really good looking T-shirts.
Mm-hmm.
We'll actually add color, so we may have it in a garnet right now, or we may have it in a black, and we're going to do more blacks, grays, whites, and oatmeals, those type of things. So no, I am extremely excited because I think the look is nice. It's good. It's clean. I wasn't really sure when we first did it. I wasn't sure what we were going to come up with, but it's good.
Yeah. Well, it's been a fun morning so far. Thank you so much for having us out here. And I know you still got a busy rest of the day to go. Joe will be out here from 3 to 6, but thanks for letting us be a part of it.
Thank you guys for being here. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. Scott Satterfield there of Gamecock Traditions as we wrap up the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Halftime show up next as your Wednesday rolls along here in the game.